welcome to the very first episode of Let's Talk with Greg
and Thomas.
Yeah. So Thomas, you might remember Thomas from Okay Now What? And I just, you're awesome. You give great commentary. You're like a very awesome progressive. So I'm really glad that you're here in person.
Yeah, it's very different from when we started. Okay, now what?
Yeah. So if you want to check out old episodes, they're alive on Spotify. But we were in different rooms because of the pandemic, and now that we are together in the same room, I'm so glad to be doing this. So what are we, Thomas?
I don't know really. When we did Okay Now What, it was sort of like we were trying to update people with news and our takes and opinions on the things that are happening in the world. And I feel like this is more of like a discussion. I don't know, like more like a expansive on like maybe, I don't know, to me, I think what we can do with this is sort of really sort of do an open-ended discussion on maybe like one big topic.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, like rather than doing like a short snippet, like there's so much that comes out during the week. So
what we're going to be doing each week, we will be covering one or one news topic or just general topic, and we'll also have a guest co-host joining in on the discussion. And this week we have the amazing Jason Call, who's running for Congress in Washington's. We'll find that out when he joins, and I don't know why it's blanking. I want to say second, but anyway, so let's go ahead and have Jason on right now. Let's go ahead and let him in. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Greg and Thomas. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great.
It's a real pleasure to get to talk to you guys again.
Yeah. So go ahead and tell the audience who you are. Who are you?
Well, that's a good question. Dangerous question. My name is Jason Call. I am a progressive candidate for Congress in Washington State 2nd District. I'm running against a 20-year corporate conservative Democrat who's deeply in the pockets of the fossil fuel industry and the military industrial complex, and essentially votes against all of the things that I would vote for, or vice versa. We actually did a little checking of his voting record with the American Conservative Union, and of all the sitting Democrats right now, he's ranked in terms of career voting record 36th most conservative. So what do we have? 230 odd Democrats in the House, and he's number 36, something like 84th percentile in the conservative direction. I know. And it's wild because so many of the Democrats in my district think that he's a good Democrat. Why are you challenging a good Democrat? Can I show you the record? He's not actually a good Democrat. Yeah. Or, as we're finding out, maybe he is a good Democrat and the problem was the whole damn party. But that's a different conversation, maybe.
He's on Blue, Jason.
Huh?
He's on Team Blue. You got to support Blue.
He's on Team Blue. He's willing to put the D behind his name, and once that's out of the way, I guess who cares what the voting record is like? But he's your typical war machine, anti-single payer, conservative Democrat, and I have no doubt that if he was in the Senate, he'd be part of that handful of Senate Democrats that's hanging out with Joe Manchin. So
cinema.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I'm running a no corporate money campaign for the second time. Ran in 2020, did very well in my opinion on a somewhat shoestring budget. We got within 1% of the primary vote of being on the ballot next to the incumbent, because Washington State has that top two primary system, just like California. So we're running it again, doing better in terms of fundraising, which fundraising is as ugly as it is necessary, but we're all grassroots, and we're just out here fighting the good fight on all fronts as best as we can.
Well, I'm so glad that you are doing the good fight up in Washington. It's funny because before I mentioned in the intro to introduce you, I was like, Washington second, right? And then you said it. So this week, we are going to be talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse case. So I'm pretty sure y'all remember back in July, right?
2020 now.
Yeah, July of 2020. You had this 17-year-old kid who decided to arm themselves, cross state lines while carrying an illegal weapon, and decided to take matters in their own hands. And while doing so, they killed 2 people and injured 1. And I just, before we get into the conversation, I just got to show this clip to y'all. So let's go ahead and do that.
You're gonna make me watch this again, are you?
Were you able to go in a northerly direction?
I wasn't.
Describe what happens.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder and Mr. Rosenbaum was now running from my right side. And I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski. And there were there were 3 people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
That's what That's what I run.
We're gonna just take time for our break anyway. You can.
Yeah. Ooh, that was probably the cringiest thing I've ever seen. And you've seen it many times, apparently.
I watched the trial day one. I happened to be at home getting some stuff done at my desk, and I had the trial on in the background, and so I got to see that performance live. And I was watching here at the house with my friend Michelle, and we were both like, no, I don't think so. Quite a performance. I have no doubt his lawyers put him up to it, but
Yeah.
if you can't squeeze a tear out, don't play that. So lot of body language and probably coaching went into that, but I have, I don't know, just
As
no.
a theater major, it made me feel better as an actor. It really did. But let's just talk about like how we got here. One, if let's just be clear, if he were any sort of darkened skin, he would not be here. He would not be in that trial having to fake cry.
Well, figure this way, right? So at the same time this is going on, you had a guy called I believe it was Daniel Baker in Florida. He posted stuff online saying we should have an armed unit in response to January 6th, as if to say we need to defend, we need to protect people from insurrectionists, and he's been jailed for 3 to 5 years, right? But people like Kyle Rittenhouse, who go into it, cross state lines with a gun and shoot 2 people, are apparently doing it in self-defense. Apparently shouldn't get any jail time whatsoever. So there's this contradictory message of, I mean, right now you've got the judge who's saying you can't even say the people he shot were victims. You can't even label them victims.
Yeah,
I actually read from somebody with experience that in itself is not terribly atypical. What I object to is the prosecution is openly allowed to call the other people rioters, not
Yeah,
protesters or
exactly.
whatever, that they are the troublemakers, when this kid literally crossed state lines to participate with the intent to participate in a fight. He took a gun to a fight and he used it. Now he could have stayed home. This whole idea of stand your ground. He could have stood his ground 100 miles away in the in the. Where did he come from? Iowa.
Yeah.
Was it Iowa? Yeah. I mean, so it takes there's some travel from Iowa to Kenosha. So he shouldn't have been there in the first place, and he went looking for trouble, and I don't know why anybody has any kind of sympathy for this kid at all. And his mother just aided and abetted this entire situation as well.
Mhm.
So where are the
Yeah, why
charges
isn't
against
she
her?
not in court right now for one, putting her kid in danger? Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, like let's face it, he had a big difference of power amongst those people, but you're still sending your kid off to a dangerous situation. So how are we not like calling CPS on her, or it's probably called different no, child protective services, yeah, but yeah, like, come on. And not only that, like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to form my thought right now. It's just, we're talking about someone who clearly was not supposed to have that weapon in their hands, and they still got it anyway. And when we talk about gun control, um we're talking about preventing that. We're talking about preventing guns from getting into the hands of people that should not be having it, like the 17-year-old.
But so I just want to I want to state the difference in the way this is being handled. So like I said before, Daniel Baker is a Florida anarchist, right? And Dan was sentenced to 3.5 years for online posts opposing another January 6th incident. But for actual participants in January 6th, we're seeing charges and sentences far below that, right? And at the same time, in this trial, you've got a judge saying that trial lawyers cannot call the two people who killed victims. Rittenhouse killed 2 people and wounded another with an AR-15 style weapon. The judge says victims is too loaded, but we'll let lawyers call them rioters, looters, or arsonists, right? So you've got I know it's 2 separate incidents, but the reality is that you've got a system where it protects people like Kyle Rittenhouse, because it's protecting the interests of capital, the interests of business, the interests of the system. And then when you've got people who are anti-fascists, people are going out of the way to deliberately stop people like this, they're jailed. And they're even not just jailed, but some of them are shot and killed before there's even a trial.
And I just want to add one more thing. What's really scary about this is that he's become like this right-wing like martyr almost. And the amount of support this guy has, like, it's sickening. It's disgusting. This person is being praised as a hero on the right. It's really sad how like
the judge in this case is so, I mean, instantly just hostile and biased, and you can see, I mean, there's the interesting thing is that this trial is very public. Like, the world is watching this trial, and here is this clearly right-wing judge who is steering in every possible way. And I'm not a lawyer, so I can't sit here and say, this was an error, or this was a whatever it might have been. But to the casual observer, it is clear how biased this judge and this trial are. I had posted on Twitter as I was going through this, just the stunning when they wanted to zoom out on, or zoom in, I should say, on the picture, and the judge said, well, you're altering the picture. No, you're not altering the picture, man. You're zooming in. And people are like, but the pixels. And I'm like, fuck out of here. Are you kidding me? So that kind of thing is just ridiculous. And the other thing that I wanted to say with a trial like this, and as sort of heated as the fascist, anti-fascist sides are in this country, and I think that there's this moderate Democrat middle that I don't think that they're going to react one way or the other, like in terms of recognizing sort of an assault on the system. But if Kyle Rittenhouse gets acquitted, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be riots. I mean, this kid should be going to jail, and I think everybody knows it. However, if he does get sentenced, it's probably going to be a pretty light sentence. But if he does get sentenced, then you got these right-wing crazies who are gonna start,
So it's like, where do we go? You're damned if you
mean,
do, and you're damned if you don't.
Well, I mean, I think what I'm saying is we're going to have to be prepared for some blowback in either direction at the conclusion of this trial. This trial doesn't end with the conclusion of this trial. This is going to be ongoing. And my point about the moderate Democrats is they're probably not going to get too terribly worked up either way.
Yeah, it's not in their best interest. Nothing is. But yeah, now I kind of want to shift the conversation a little closer to gun control. Now you're running for Congress. What do you think we should do when it comes to the gun issue? Like, is it a total ban on AR-15s? Is it treating getting a gun like getting a car? Like, what do you think?
So I will be honest. I know what popular opinion is on the gun issue on sort of the left, or I say when I say left, I don't want to necessarily include Democrats, because Democrats aren't the actual left. But I would say on the Democratic side of things, on the liberal side of things, I know what popular opinion is on gun control. But then if you swing left, there are some people on the left who are like, hey, I'm a responsible gun owner and don't take my gun away. I think we really have to do a re-examination of what the Second Amendment actually means. And the people I know on the left are part of what I would say is well-regulated militia. I've got friends in the Puget Sound John Brown Gun Club, and they, hold trainings and how to do proper this, that, and I say this out of ignorance because I'm not a gun owner. I don't have a gun. I have had kids in my household. My kids are teenagers now. I never wanted a gun in the house. I've been hunting before. I've fired guns before. I understand some people enjoy them. I don't enjoy them. In the same way I don't enjoy fireworks. Like, they're loud and obnoxious, and I don't see a purpose for them. But I do see, like, a purpose in guns as a tool. There are some legitimate tools, tool-based things that guns can be used for. I don't know that an AR-15 falls into that category. Okay, so I think the reality is that AR-15s, and people will say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, clip this and blah blah that. I think the reality is, guys, you've got to accept that they're toys, right? They're really not tools, they're toys. They're tools in the hands of a well-regulated militia or a military, right? But in the hands of your common citizenry, they're toys. And so I always go to, okay, are you okay with somebody owning their own personal nuclear bomb? And if the answer to that is no, then we're on the same page with regulation. We're just arguing about where the line is. So I think
but Jason, I want my own bomb. No, I'm kidding.
and I don't want you to have your own bomb. So I think gun regulation is an ongoing conversation, and I do think we need to protect people's personal rights, but I would put it in the same category as vaccinations. I am pro-vaccination because this is a public health issue, and if we start looking at guns as a public health issue, then I think that we have, we have more ground to do some gun regulation, common sense gun regulation, as opposed to just, having this knee-jerk reaction to, I don't like guns, so I'm going to take your guns away. It is a deep conversation because guns are a part of this nation's history, and they have been, right from the start.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, because I know the culture's different in the UK. How is it?
My thought process on this has changed over time. Like when I was a lot younger, I always viewed America with guns as like, why? Because I grew up in a country that the most I've ever got exposed to it was hunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it was very restricted. You could only have certain guns. You had to have a gun cabinet. You had to have a license. You had to go through all. It's very, very restricted. Like,
it's like getting a car, right?
Nearly everybody I encountered. I mean, there's maybe one or two people I knew that had a gun, and it was a hunting rifle, and that was it. Like that.
Yeah, I grew up in England too. My dad was a bird hunter, and he had guns for that purpose, but he didn't have like just a ton of guns lying around, and he never had an AR type.
But my thought process is it expanded to be a little bit less, I'd say, the liberal or centrist viewpoint on guns is to just ban it outright without even recognizing that the state and its violence towards its people, and then taking away that defense mechanism from people is not the right answer. I mean, in this country, the police are literally killing people now, right?
Yeah.
And if you take that defense mechanism away from the people, you're left with a state that is just outright.
And not just people. That, like you do have rural states where people are like living in a forest, and if I was living in a forest and there's a bunch of nature out there, I think I would want a gun.
So my viewpoint is sort of I've grown a little bit in terms of what I think. I think we can ban guns, but I mean that encompasses the state. That encompasses the state needs to ban it itself. Then the police cannot be armed.
That's a point I wanted to make also. I am for full demilitarization. I think we should take guns away from the police. I think police in America should have guns in the same way police in England have guns, which is they don't have them except in very, very rare circumstances. And I think that's a part of the whole bigger defund the police conversation, is that you're having police who are not armed police taking care of this, that, and the other, rather than having an armed response, which very often turns out, tragically for the people who call the damn police. So,
I think it's also demilitarizing our culture, because there's always like, oh, I gotta get my weapon, and like there's always that like violence is such a
it's the first state of mind. For a lot of people in this country, it's just, gun culture is a state of mind. So I don't, I want to tread very carefully in terms of protecting people's rights. But I also think that, in the end, general public health, I think we have to take into consideration general public health and how it's impacted by guns. One of the things that rarely gets talked about with gun culture, and one of the places that I like to go is the Socialist Rifle Association, when I want to kind of read up on some things about, the left-wing perspective on guns. The Socialist Rifle Association has some really good perspectives on it. And one of the things
linking that in the description below.
Okay. one of the things that does not get identified is when we talk about gun violence, that the majority of gun deaths are suicides, right?
Yeah.
So they're not AR-15. So the AR-15 killings are these mass killings that are very sort of sensationalist and horrific. But in terms of overall, gun deaths, it's really suicide by pistol. And why aren't, if guns are such a big problem, why aren't we addressing, the mental health issues? And I know people get really weirded out about, well, don't focus on mental health, it's really the guns. But mental health really is an issue when it comes to gun violence. And like I said, it's not the mental health issues of people who are like angry and going to go shoot people up. It's the mental health issues of people who are depressed in this capitalist society, and then want to off themselves because they don't have any help.
Yeah.
That's the thing that doesn't get to. And then the other issue is, if you want to reduce crime, address poverty. I mean,
Mhm.
we could eliminate, well, virtually eliminate gun crimes in this country if people had stable housing, stable healthcare, stable income. Gun violence is a product of the mass amounts of instability that we have in this country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I you 100% agree. That was spot on.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, I grew up when I was a kid in my small village town. The bar owner shot himself, and I was in the UK. That was where I grew up. So it's not this. You're right. Like, even in a country that doesn't have mass gun ownership, it is a serious mental health issue, and
Mhm.
it's caused by state oppression on in terms of the system. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I don't know, like, you can't talk about serious gun reform without addressing the underlying issues, like you just said. So
Yeah. Well, Jason, um, I want to go ahead and end the episode with just a shout out to you. So go ahead and explain how people can help your campaign, what you're currently doing,
Sure.
and yeah.
Well, we are working on endorsements. I was just endorsed by Future Generations PAC, which is Rosa Calderon's.
Oh, nice.
She was a justice, Rosa. She was a Justice Democrat in 2018, and now has a PAC that helps progressive candidates. And so they've just endorsed me. As you know, I'm endorsed by Marianne Williamson and Blue America, Ava Pitsova's Catch Fire organization. We're working on Sunrise. My local Sunrise should be endorsing here pretty soon. So we're working on building up endorsements. We're working on building fundraising. If anybody wants to donate to my campaign, fundraising is the big issue for progressive campaigns right now, because progressive fundraising is just hard. My opponent he doesn't even have to make a phone call, and Boeing or Amazon are dropping 10 grand in his pocket. But our average contribution so far is something like $23 over the course of the primary season so far. Primary is in August of 22, so we got a long way to go. Callforcongress.com. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I've got a new logo here. Let me adjust my camera a little bit, but there's my new logo, the orca whale. Really proud of that new design. And we've got a web store. So if anybody wants to buy a T-shirt, buy a coffee mug, buy a bumper sticker, to help out the campaign, there's a web store on the website. What else do I want to say? That's probably about. Follow me on Twitter. I got a lot of stuff to say. I take on the establishment. I participated in the General Strike Summit yesterday. If you're aware of that, that's being hosted by Fred Hampton leftists. I think we need to do on the left. We need to do more community building and more solidarity building,
Yes.
and continue to work to take on this capitalist system, because in the end, capitalism is the problem. So,
Amen to that.
yeah.
All right, Jason. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And also, y'all who are watching, thank you for watching another episode of Let's Talk with Greg and
Thomas.
Yeah. So we will
Been
be
a pleasure.
posting. What was that?
I said it's been a pleasure.
Of course. We post weekly videos on Mondays in the morning. So catch us on YouTube. Take care, folks. We'll see you next week.